Hey Stephanie, thanks for taking a minute to join us. I'd love it if you could share a little bit about yourself. How did you get into composing and the journey that you've been on as a composer?
Yeah, so I actually started composing just a little bit, playing around with it in high school. It was always interesting being able to listen to different parts in bands and different parts in ensembles and really just hearing the interplay between different voices, which led me to just start getting interested in composition. And then from there, I decided to pursue an undergraduate degree in composition at the University of North Texas, which was a huge jump for me, moving as far as I did across the country just to pursue that degree. After I graduated in 2022, I then went to the Wizarding School in the spring of 2023, and that helped me get a lot more clarity, helped me get a lot more good compositional skills, which then helped me get to where I am now. And where I am now is I am currently teaching tuba and euphonium lessons in multiple different school districts in Texas, and I also have done a couple compositional things on the side as well.
That's awesome. Let's jump back a little bit further into your story. So you're there, you're doing your undergrad at UNT. What was it that you wanted to achieve being a composition major there?
Well, I'm sure like most composers, we really want like I really want to have people be inspired by new music, and I want to help people get inspired by music as much as I was when I was younger and going through music programs throughout my entire music program. Knowing my personality, I knew I would be able to more successfully do that through composition or through smaller teaching stuff. I knew I would get burnt out if I was a large scale band director, but I still really want to help people be really connected to music.
What sort of challenges were you facing? Obviously, UNT was a fantastic program, but I'm sure that as you were going through the program, there are some difficulties as well that you're trying to overcome in your growth as a composer.
I mean, like it is true that UNT is a great program. What I love about UNT is that they had like a huge music library, so I could like study scores. But I think a part of it at UNT, obviously part of it's just I moved from Wisconsin to Texas, and that's already a big move that I'm challenging on top of all the classwork and schoolwork. Just finding myself as a person definitely hindered some things because not only am I trying to discover myself as a composer, but just myself as a person in general. But I think additionally, UNT is a great program, but and I love the fact that I got to meet a lot of different people. It being a big school does have its pros and cons, and I love the pros that I got from it, being able to work with many different musicians. But part of the it was really big, so I did flounder a bit, and that's not the end of the world because I feel like the pros outweighed the cons, but me floundering a bit also led me to not get as much out as I could have.
I feel like that experience is very common for a lot of us. I know for me as well, when I was in my undergrad, that was something that I struggled with, and I wasn't at a big program. Is that, like you said, we're trying to find ourselves as composers. We go in, typically have an idea of what we want to do musically, and then music school exposes us to all these different things, and then we're just led to question a lot of stuff that we might have believed about music or what we want to do, right?
Oh yeah, and like that, I'm definitely very glad I got to be exposed to such diverse music experiences. Like I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't do the jazz band program my senior year, or like even just be exposed to all the music that I still think is a bit crazy through the composition program. Even if I still think it's crazy, it's still fun to try to justify like why it's crazy, why I wouldn't write stuff like that, but it still builds on my musical experiences.
No, for sure. So you mentioned wanting to find yourself as a composer. What would that mean for your composing and for you to find yourself as a composer?
I think a part of it, and I've been working on it, especially since graduating from UNT and going through the wizarding school, is just finding that target audience and finding how specifically I can have my music help people. I think before, when I was just writing through the majority of my undergrad, I was just kind of writing music that I sounded good but just because it sounds good doesn't mean it exactly has the best purpose. And of course, I still sometimes do that today, but now it's a little bit more purposeful, even if it's not the most purposeful, but just trying to find music that has purpose, has meaning, even if it's just some small exercise that can help one musician.
Awesome. I love that. Let's talk about how you got from, wanting to find yourself as a composer and, finding ways to help people to where you are now. So you attended the Wizarding School in spring of 2023. What frameworks did you use, or what tools did the Wizarding School expose you to that were helpful for you finding yourself as a composer?
So the tools that were pretty great, first of all, there were some tools just even outside of specifically composing, but in terms of like networking, that did help me reach those people and learn what they needed. Sometimes, especially during college when I had COVID and all that crazy stuff happen, a lot of people that I worked with sometimes trying to figure out what we need the most was just a little bit more of a struggle than other years. And so just being able to work around and see, okay, what do people need? What do people want? That's been beneficial in order to grow with that. And then for actual tools, I think a lot of the tools I learned through the Wizarding School, both in terms of like reframing and like editing the score, have been the most beneficial. And also just being okay with writing a bunch of ideas down and being okay if half of them aren't the greatest. Because I think when I was doing my undergrad, I really wanted to get it right the first time. But of course, that's a very hard thing to do to get right the first time. And I think there's been like experiments where they have like groups of people, two different groups of people, where they told one group to like get it right the first time, and they told another group of people just try as much as possible. I think they found that like the other group who's tried it a bunch of times, that their quality of work may have been higher. So I think it's just being okay with like being more okay with failure than I was before. And that's just a perfectionist thing on my end. Like, that's nothing about that UNT taught me. That's just perfectionist on my end that I had to break through.
I'm curious how you broke through that. What was it that you learned, or what was it that you experienced that helped you break through that perfectionism?
I mean, like, still a process that I'm working through because it's such an ingrained habit just because of life. But I think just going through the process in the wizarding school and seeing, like, I don't know, at colleges and universities, this is a great thing, still a great thing about UNT is that I still got to talk to and work with like master students and graduate students. Very fortunate with that. One of the detriments is like, oh, they're clearly at like they've had much more years of experience. So sometimes it was hard for me to like differentiate like I am 20. I do not need to write as good as like someone who's in their 30s and 40s. I can give myself grace. So I think it's just going into a space where it's okay to like see those failures more often because well, I got to see those things at UNT, just seeing them more frequently, but also getting to experiment with divergent thoughts of processes more was also beneficial.
So one of the key projects that you worked on in the Wizarding School was the orchestra piece that you recorded in Budapest. Can you tell me a little bit more about that project?
Yeah, so that was an orchestra piece that I wrote. No, you established that, but I guess I like repeating words. It was called The Warmth and Yearning, and that was a really fun piece to write. And it was like the Wizarding School when I first started, I that's when I started to like listen to more recordings and actually start to draw more inspiration from those pieces, which isn't something I did as much in UNT. It was something that was implied that we could do, but it wasn't as emphasized that we could draw as much inspiration. And or it was just related to me in a way that was different, and I got to fully embrace that more. So the project, the Warmth and Yearning, the orchestra project, it was really fun. for a lot of reasons. I think a part of it, why it was partly fun, is because I got to experiment in different ways. Like I said before, have fun seeing. I got to really embrace the fun in trying different ways and seeing which one worked better, which I didn't allow myself to have as much fun in trying multiple different ways before. So then when we got to read it with the in Budapest, that was also really fun since I don't know, reading a full orchestral piece, orchestras are really fun to listen to. Something about just that many string players is fun. Coming from someone who typically doesn't play in an orchestra, euphonium, trombone, I don't know, it's just a different environment. It's really fun listening to all that. After all of that happened, it took a while for me to figure out what I want to do with this piece, since I didn't want it to just sit in the corner not doing anything. It was probably the best piece I've written up till that point, and probably like one of the better pieces that I've still written. I still am a really big fan of it myself. So later in February of 2024, I attended the Texas Music Educators Association, TMEA, conference that they have in person. And it's always they have booths of people, booths of publishers, booths of distributors, and just other generic booths. And I just, even though I still went to some education clinics, I also went and talked to these distributors, partly to learn how they help educators, but also partly just to see how their process was in submitting and getting works distributed with them. And there was one group, Staccato Music, that I talked to who was very willing to listen to the orchestra piece that I wrote for the Wizarding School. So I sent it over to them after the entire conference happened because the conference was pretty busy. And they decided that they liked it enough and that they would distribute it through them, which is still really exciting. So once we got all the things signed and all of it notated just the way how they want it, then it's up on their website, and that's just a really exciting thing to have.
I'm curious, what was it like to approach the folks at Staccato Music? And, obviously you would have approached some other people too. How did you go about doing that, and how did it feel to reach out to those people?
I mean, I think a part of it, luckily it was at a conference, so it's definitely like not the worst thing. Like you see just like a bunch of people and I don't know, I guess to me it's like easier in a conference than just like randomly talk to them on the street just because they're in a situation they want to talk to you. A lot of these music people at conferences, half the reason why they're there is to talk to people. That's how they get their music out there. So Staccato Music was not the first booth I visited, so luckily I got like a fair amount of practice just interacting with people. Everyone's friendly, everyone's fine. So when I actually got to them, it was, just it felt like a normal conversation because I already got these experiences before talking in a formal way, which was very good. So, they gave me their little business card thing that I don't have on me, but like nice little business card, and I got to just email them afterwards. And the more I talk to people, most music people want other music people to succeed. And that's just a very good thing to have.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really empowering paradigm shift once we realize that, because I feel like oftentimes, I know for me in the past, when I was a much younger composer, I felt like I had something to prove. But over the years, I've definitely experienced what you have, is that most of our colleagues, they want each other to succeed. And I think that that's a really cool place to be in.
Yeah, and that's definitely really exciting because I think the unfortunate thing about college, and obviously this is not just UNT, I still think my experience over there was overall positive. I think because you had such a big school and you're all in the same place and you don't get to spread out as much. Unfortunately, there is increased competition for limited places. So even though everyone did want each other to succeed, when there's that competition, it's not as easy for everyone to succeed.
So what happened next? So you got The Warmth of Yearning published by Zaccato Music. Has it been performed since then?
It's been performed once so far. After that, we just had a performance this month actually by one of the orchestras in Madison, Wisconsin. I believe their name is Concord Chamber Orchestra. I'm just going to confirm them. Yeah, the Concord Chamber Orchestra had performed it within the past week, and they're from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of which I grew up about an hour away from.
So how did that performance come about?
So the performance came about. I definitely got a lot more comfortable seeing how many, fellow music people want to see other music people succeed. Luckily, been getting a bigger community of people that want to advocate for other musicians and other people. And obviously, when I get into a higher position, I'd want to do the same for others. But just seeing orchestras that I grew up near, kind of grew up like an hour away from. So, there was a lot of orchestras in kind of the Milwaukee area, just because Milwaukee's the biggest city in Wisconsin as far as I'm aware. And, just kind of emailing and networking with the people who work there, as long as you find like the right person, they tend to be at least willing to talk as long as you approach the email with interest and not completely advertising right off the bat, then people tend to genuinely be interested in others.
Well, I love that. First off, congratulations on getting the first performance of the piece. That's a great accomplishment.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing that I love about it too is just kind of how, you mentioned about, oh yeah, you just email and you network with the people. I love how like comfortable is what I'm hearing with that. How did you get to that level of comfort with networking?
I think like music before, like how I was talking about like the trial and error things, I think it's similar to that. Like I think, you hear enough no's where like an additional no is like not the end of the world. You hear enough like maybes where it's like that's exciting too. You hear enough like yes, but maybe later where it's just like you get used to it. Where I don't think I was able to have that experience as much before. Like I wasn't as used to it before.
Well, congratulations again on that. I think that that's fantastic, both again that it got performed and that you've developed a sense of comfort with the networking. I think that that's fantastic. So, what are you working on now in your composing?
Oh, like so I just kind of started writing some duets for the students I have in the tuba euphony lessons. Kind of just started writing some duets, partly for fun, partly because there were some duets that I found that had a much bigger range than some of my beginners, but I still wanted beginners to have some opportunities to play duets since I personally think that sight reading is a great skill to develop and I can like sight read duets with kids in lessons, but I don't want them to be too complicated for my first year kids because I don't want to scare them with sight reading. Some of the some of them get scared doing sight reading in their main class because there's a huge sight reading like concert band judging grading thing that happens in March every year for Texas schools. So some of them just get nervous because the band directors take it seriously. And that's no fault of anybody, it's just life happens. So I definitely want them to get more comfortable just identifying key signature, time signature, being comfortable citing and making the mistake without having to go back all the time.
Obviously, you're writing these so they're easy enough that they can be successful, but hard enough that it's so challenging. How do you also make them fun and interesting? What have you been approaching in your composing to do that?
That's definitely a challenge right now. I'm just honestly throwing a lot of ideas down, just seeing if they're like interesting right now. I've definitely been like, I've sight read them with like a couple students in lessons. And the good thing about having lesson students is that middle school kids are brutally honest. Like they will let you know if it sucks. which is a blessing and a curse because you get all the good feedback. But man, middle school kids can roast you. But I'll take it. They're really honest. So I'll definitely know if they're interesting. If a kid says it sucks, I know it'll suck.
That's really funny. I also feel like there's something, kind of sweet about middle school kids. It's like, yeah, they'll
Oh,
roast you, but it's kind of hard to be offended, you know?
they roast you from the bottom of their heart. They really are, they're very honest and loving. It's a very honest, loving roast. So you can't be mad. But it's also just trying to keep a straight face, like, okay, yeah, cool.
I love that. I love that.
Half of it's just trying, like, I got some kids who are middle school who are very much using the Gen Alpha terminology, and I don't quite know what's going on. And I'm like, I'm only in my 20s. I didn't expect to not understand kids. But then they'll just be like, that was Sigma. And I'm like, it's like good, bad, I don't know. It's good, apparently, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that changed because I feel like, maybe I'm just in this like bubble position, but I feel like, our slang was a little bit more comprehensible to outsiders.
I think so. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I grew up with enough, like, people who are older, but like not before it was like completely younger, where it's, I don't know what's going on. And I feel like I should because I feel like I'm not that old. But
Yeah,
hey, that's okay.
cool.
I can be a bit confused. It's okay. It's part of the fun.
Totally. Well, to wrap this up, I just have one more question to ask you. So we've been talking a lot about the Wisdom School for Composers program. I'm curious who you'd recommend it to.
I think especially knowing like how many different like entry level tiers that you have on the website, I think there's like a lot of different people who are interested in composition that can benefit from it. I've noticed even the benefit from like even just writing the little duets for the lesson kids and just being able to do that. That's been beneficial. But also just in terms of like the broader compositional trajectory with the whole orchestra piece. Elevate having that the wizarding school being able to take what I learned from UNT and just elevating that to another degree, I think has also helped. So I guess if you're interested in composition at any level, it can be beneficial.
Very cool. Well, thanks again, Stephanie, for taking the time to chat with us and to tell us about your composing journey. I wish you every success as you continue, and I hope that Warmth and Yearning continues to get more performances.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a fun journey so far and obviously hoping it keeps going.